have you ever gone out into the field to record guns?
Actually, I did that. Working on Patan was fun because I told you it had almost every kind of action that I can think about. I went to Vietnam, and in Vietnam, it was in Ho Chi Minh. There are these caves. Adjacent to that, a little ahead, they had this firing field.
Okay.
So they have the option to fire AK-47 RPDs
Uh-huh.
and I think M series, the M5s.
Okay.
So I fired all these things, and I had actually taken a recorder.
Oh, wow.
I had taken a recorder thinking that it would record something, whatever I get. And I got the opportunity to fire these guns, and I actually recorded that. And I have used that in Patan actually to some in some people. Yeah.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Anant, and welcome to this podcast where this is all about you. A day in your life, where I interview people from all walks of life to get a glimpse of their everyday lives. In today's episode, we have with us Ganesh Gangadharan, Senior Sound Designer at Vira Studios. Let's get this conversation started and get to know more about him. Good afternoon, Mr. Ganesh.
Good afternoon, Anant.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
It's wonderful to have you on the show at such a short notice. Thank you for coming on board.
Yeah, most welcome. Yeah, you're such an old friend, and of course, I knew that you were doing something interesting. So I thought, be a part of it. Why not?
That's really nice of you. Could you tell me where you were born and brought up? A little about yourself?
My name is Ganesh Gangadharan. I'm an audio engineer and a sound designer. So I was born in Cochin, Kerala,
Mm-hmm.
and after I finished my college education, I was working as a software engineer for about 4 years, and then that is a time when internet was freely available a little more, and I got to know about various other fields, and always interested in audio engineering because I was a little into music and all when I was in college. So naturally, a lot of sound engineers actually start off as musicians. Music is what gets them into this field,
Right.
right? So, and internet thing happened between 2000 2005. That it's around 98 onwards. Of course, there was no enough bandwidth for you to actually do a lot of research, and neither I don't think that at that time there was a lot of information available on the net.
Correct. There was no Google at that time.
Exactly, Google Lycos mostly. It was Lycos, Alta Vista, and all that. So I used to search for consoles about recordings and how process done, because that time good records used to. I mean, that's also the time when the CD was a big thing, right?
Yes.
Remember compact disc, and suddenly from the cassettes to CD was a big jump in clarity of audio. If you want to say it in layman's terms, suddenly the music world opened up, and there were also the MTV. Remember the MTV Channel V and all came up that time. The music scene was very happening,
Yup, I remember.
and you used to see in some of the videos, you can see music studios, how the recordings are done, and certainly that fascinates you, right?
Absolutely.
And then when I joined this software thing, I was working there and used to browse the net, learn about audio things. Came across a few colleges, that time. I didn't know even India had good facilities at that time. I mean, and then I started searching for audio engineering courses and all that. And I came across SA, which was the head office was in Australia. So I was wondering, whether I should be going abroad to do the studies.
Mm-hmm.
Then I found out that they had a marketing interface very close to my house. So I just visited them. I got to know about SA, and then they told me that Mumbai has an institute. So that's how this whole thing of reaching Mumbai happened.
Awesome.
Yeah, so this was in 2005. May 4th, I resigned my job, and May 5th, I got into the train to Mumbai. Yeah, I just came to the institute, had a look. It took a little more while to start for the classes to start, but then yeah, by the time I was a big fan of audio engineering, and that's probably the only time I was like really waiting to learn something. I never wanted to go to school or college, but every single day at SA, audio engineering. Once I joined audio engineering, I enjoyed every single day of it. So that's how it started. Yeah.
I also remember that you were assisting post your course there.
Yeah. So I was a student supervisor. So that gave me a really good opportunity to, play around with a lot more equipments than I was actually qualified to at that point.
Correct. I'm sure you would have had more hands-on experience during that period than you were during your learning time.
Correct.
From SAE to current day YRF Studios, what's your primary role here?
See, I'm a sound designer now.
Okay.
I started off as a sound editor.
Okay.
I was assisting Ali Merchant, that time sound editor of PyRF, and then later on that he became the sound designer. So when I started off, as I started, my job was like assisting Ali.
Okay.
Worked with Ali for about 2.5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then Ali started freelancing. Then I was the sound editor of PyRF,
Okay.
and then in 2013 was my first film as a sound designer, like independent sound designer, was Doom 3.
Wow.
Before that, I had done work on a movie called Lahore, and but for YRF, my first movie was Doom 3 as a sound designer.
Nice.
The life of the designer started from there.
What's the difference between a sound editor and the sound designer?
Basic difference between a sound editor and a sound designer is that it's more of a managerial job.
Okay.
When you become a sound designer, you're also a sound editor, plus you are also managing the entire project in terms of the sound department. So that is a fundamental difference.
Okay.
Because then what happens is you are the single point contact to the producer or the director and for the other departments, and you are the person who's taking all the final calls.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of decision making there. Plus you are also sound editor. So sound editor, as a sound designer, you might also have a team working with you,
Mm-hmm.
and then you come in as a decision maker. You have your team divide to work on sections. Say for example, the foley section works on the foley. The dialogue editor cleans up the dialogue, edits the dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have your sound editors who are doing all your effects and ambiences. And there might be an action sequence which I might do myself,
Mm-hmm.
or it might be assigned to a one particular sound editor. So it's all a teamwork when everything comes together.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how everything should sound as one part of the entire visual experience. So basically, it's just how you bring everything together.
Wow. It'd be so fascinating to be designing sounds for films. How do you go about prepping for a sound design project? How much time does it usually take to, mix or design a film or a OTT show?
Okay. What happens is when, say, for example, a project comes to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Attendance sequence, what usually happens is generally like a production calls you and they say that, we have this particular project
Mm-hmm.
directed by this particular director,
Okay.
and would you like to see the movie, would you like to be a part of it, or we would like to have you, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then suppose you agree to it, and then you go and see the movie once at their office, either be the production or they will send you the movie. The next is that you basically have a discussion with the director regarding how you liked the movie,
Right.
or sometimes you had certain points that you would like to make. And then once all that is sorted, then you start with the post production.
Okay.
So in post production, the first stage is, I would say, would be the dialogue cleanup.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if the movie is a sing-song film, which it is most of the time nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
then you get the dialogue tracks.
Mm-hmm.
You have a look, and then you start editing the dialogue tracks.
Correct.
So in between, I would add a few technical things, like say, for example, the dialogue track, the location drive comes to you, you actually map it, your EDLs, and then you get a dialogue session.
Right.
Okay, so what EDL does is EDL has the time code and the data, metadata of every single clip that has been recorded and that has been used in the edit.
Right.
So the editor, once the editor has finalized the edit, he will give you something called EDL. EDL is the edit decision list.
C-
Based on that, you can get the dialogue tracks.
Right.
So basically, when you sync it, you get the dialogue tracks which has been recorded on location in sync with the picture,
Right.
and the dialogue editor starts editing the dialogues.
Okay.
The editing the dialogues means that basically smoothing out between takes. Say, for example, let's imagine that there is a dialogue conversation between you and me.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie, the Anant is talking to Ganesh. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so the shots in which Anant is talking must have been recorded at 10 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
and my close-ups are taken at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay, there will be definitely a difference in ambiences.
Correct.
Imagine shooting in Mumbai and 10 a.m. traffic is much, much up higher than the 4 p.m. traffic.
Correct.
So, how do you make this believable in terms of sound that they are talking to each other?
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
We have shot some lines together,
Mm-hmm.
and then I have left, or you have left. Then
Hmm.
I'm taking your close-ups, and you're taking, and then they're taking my close-ups.
Hmm.
This might happen in two different timelines.
Right.
and the ambient sounds are completely different.
Correct. Correct.
Say for any city or for any place, the day ambience doesn't sound like the night ambience, correct?
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely. So then, how do you make it sound like they are actually talking to each other?
Hmm.
That is when the dialogue editor comes in, cleans up all the sounds that are not required,
Okay.
and then lays his own, like a room tone, sometimes recorded on the set or off the set or wherever, and makes it sound like one unit.
Right.
Like it's actually as if two people are talking to each other. Although the shots must have been recorded when both of are not even like close to each other.
Hmm.
So this one part of the dialogue editing.
Got it.
Okay, and then the next comes to dialogue cleanup. Now imagine that we are shooting in Mumbai. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we put a set next to the Western Express Highway. They made some huts. They
Mm-hmm.
made a chota road,
Mm-hmm.
but your sound, you cannot cheat sound. The
Hmm.
sound is still going to capture the metro,
Yeah.
the trucks that are going on,
Yeah.
right? The cars and all those sounds. The sound is going to capture, but which is not a part of the village life.
Correct.
So what does the dialogue get clean up during the process? Dialogue cleanup process. What the dialogue editor does is it removes all those tracks, all those additional sounds that are there in the track,
Hmm.
correct, and then make a clean dialogue track.
Okay.
So there are softwares for that. There are multiple softwares for that. He in a combination of softwares for that.
Mm-hmm.
So using all that, he creates a dialogue track as if there is only the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the basic fundamental jobs of the dialogue editor,
Okay.
is to edit and clean up the dialogue tracks.
Okay.
So now the dialogue section is done.
Okay.
Also, what happens is sometimes there's a truck pass by and a very important dialogue ke upar, there is some horn on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
So then what you do is that you might have to look for alternate takes because the same shot must have been taken from different angles. So the dialogue must have gotten captured.
Right.
So if the performance is correct, then we can replace that section, noisy section, with a better silent part.
Okay.
The same dialogue, he must have said it more than once.
Right.
So instead of choosing a noisy section, we can choose the same dialogue where there was no truck pass.
Hmm. What softwares do you use for cleanups? RX?
It's nowadays mostly RX.
Okay.
There is also something called the Clarity VX by Waves. We tried some basic stuff on it, and I think it works quite well. But we've always been working on RX right from RX 2 or 3.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Now it is on RX 10.
Yeah.
So, and it has gone really advanced in terms of the output and the technology, the algorithm that they've been using.
Yeah. How about something like Cedar Audio? Do you guys also use that?
Radar, I've never used in my life. I've never used it actually.
That's too fancy.
I've heard that that there used to be this hardware and it used to work quite well.
Uh-huh.
But considering how technology has advanced, I'm sure that the softwares that are there right now
Mm-hmm.
are truly they've achieved a lot.
Okay.
They're far more advanced than what we used to have earlier.
Right.
Like every year there is a new version coming out, and there is a significant difference. There is a significant advancement in that technology.
Interesting.
So then the next process is the design part, basically the sound editing, the Foley, and etc.
Mm-hmm.
So Foley is a different department which also comes under the main sound design section.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a Foley team. We give the movie to the Foley. They will watch the movie. They'll make a list of property that they will need to create the sounds.
Okay.
Foley is basically the sounds that, for example, the footsteps,
Right.
the interaction between people.
Hmm.
Uh, say, for example, if there is a scene where two people are drinking water, glass, bottles, eyes,
Right.
footsteps, walking, every activity that you see in the movies is part of Foley,
Correct.
except, say, the fight sounds, the bike sounds,
Mm-hmm.
the car sounds, the explosions, all those are part of effects.
Mm-hmm.
So every other sound that is done by the character in the movie, say for example, he's walking, coming, opening a door,
Mm-hmm.
uh, sitting in a car, the sitting part, the creaks, the rustles, the taps.
All that is folly. Yeah.
Correct. They are tapping the shoulders, they're giving a handshake.
Mm-hmm.
So all the sounds that were created by the interaction of characters in the movies are Foley sound.
Okay.
So that's all done by the Foley team. And then there are effects where you create the ambiances. Like say for example, in the earlier example that I said,
Mm-hmm.
you have a village made next to the expressway
Correct.
in a city, right? But you
Correct.
still have to establish the ambience of a village. So what
Hmm.
do you do? We have libraries. Sometimes we have libraries. Sometimes we have recordings.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes somebody must have traveled to a village and actually gotten the sounds recorded.
Hmm.
So there'll be a generally like a they just a little wind, might be a distant cow or a distant bullock cart traveling, depending on whatever the kind of village that is.
Right.
So you recreate that environment
I get it. Yeah. Correct.
using sound. Yeah. So that is all part of the effects ambience editing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the effects and the foley come together. They premix the foley is basically where you actually decide what level that is. Like something that is far
Mm-hmm.
is heard much lower at level than something that is closer. So that is when
Correct.
you do all your leveling and stuff.
Correct. Correct.
So that's a part of your premix. Nowadays, the design also encompasses of leveling and adding the right reverb and the kind of treatment that a scene requires,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So that all comes under effects and design.
Got it. Got it.
So basically, these are the fundamental work of the effects team or the sound designer. You could say the foley, the dialogue editing, the dialogue cleanup, and the effects and ambiances.
Awesome. Awesome. Oh, that's a lot of work.
It is. So regarding the timeline, that the question that you asked,
Mm-hmm.
see, most of the time the production comes up with a timeline already. They have already have a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
They say, for example, if it's January, they come saying that oh, we have to finish this by March so that in April we can release it.
Right.
So then you work around and you make a schedule
Mm-hmm.
so as to meet their deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
That is how it usually happens. Sometimes where there are very, very strict deadlines, say for example, that sometimes you need to finish the entire film in 20-25 days.
Oh.
The sorter productions house have their deadline sorted. They have a proper release date,
Hmm.
and they have a date on when the VFX is going to come,
Right.
when we need to, when the BGM is going to happen
Mm-hmm.
and get delivered to the mix. When are we going to, review with the director?
Hmm.
So we make a proper schedule on all that, and we try and follow it as much as possible.
Oh, great. Great. Who makes all these schedules and who sees to that?
It's a teamwork. So basically, the sound designer and the production and the director all we are. So basically, the producer, the director, and the sound designer sit together
it's
and
all a
make the.
collaborative effort,
Yes,
in
absolutely,
between
absolutely.
teams, as in, someone will be coordinating between everyone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because we also need to know at what stage we need to deliver what.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's a collective thing, but most of the time it's a producer's decision to have the release date.
Any insights into a particular film or a series that you want to talk about?
I would say that the latest is Pathan,
Uh-huh.
and it's been doing really well.
Right.
Yeah, so working on Pathan was fun because I told you it had almost every kind of action that I can think about.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's got fist fight, it's got airplane, it's got bikes, it's got cars, it's got explosions, and it's got you just name it and it has it. So yeah.
So all these aircraft and your explosions are all library sounds, correct?
Yes, 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 absolutely.
Okay.
So sometimes what I do is when I get a new movie,
Mm-hmm.
I purchase libraries based on that movie, and especially if there is something new.
Ah.
Except for example, there is a lot of fight. Like during war, I had bought a new series of fist fight and martial arts
Mhm.
libraries.
Okay.
And for Thugs of Hindustan, I had bought a lot of powder guns. You know that powder gun is the old the old world guns
I got it.
where you used to stuff the powder gun into this thing and then trigger that. So because Thugs was also period, so
Yeah.
that had entirely different kind of gunshots. Whereas a war or a Pathanas are entirely different because a lot of AK-47s are used in Pathan, and especially when you see a lot of Middle East action,
Mm-hmm.
they use the AK-47 extensively,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the period would be more like powder guns and all that.
Have you ever gone out into the field to record guns? I don't think that's done in India, but I'm just asking out of curiosity.
Actually, I did that.
Uh-huh.
I went to Vietnam, and in Vietnam, it was in Ho Chi Minh. There are these caves. Adjacent to that, a little ahead, they had this firing field.
Okay.
So they have the option to fire AK-47 RPDs
Uh-huh.
and I think M series, the M5s.
Okay.
So I fired all these things, and I had actually taken a recorder.
Oh, wow.
Eventually, it just happened. I had taken a recorder, thinking that it would record something, whatever I get. And I got the opportunity to fire these guns. I actually recorded that, and I have used that in Patan actually to some in some people. Yeah,
Awesome. That would have made a superb recording.
yeah. Usually we work on most 90% of the time we get libraries, but this was like something else to actually recorded those sounds. But and I'm telling you, Anand, it is a completely different feeling to actually hear the gun.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had already worked on one action sequence before I went to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And there, when I fired the AK-47, I understood that the sounds that you hear in movies.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, it's much more alive when you actually hear it. It's an entire package of a feeling.
Yeah.
It's not just a sound. Like you hold the gun, you fire it, and when you hear it, right,
Mm-hmm.
it's an out of the world experience. It's something else.
Right.
It's quite fun to actually fire an AK-47. Then you understand that the gravity of the whole thing. Like it's not a joke. You can't just handle a gun because the kind of recoil that I have that in my on my Instagram. I have that video on my Instagram actually. The process of recording those sounds, I put it on my Instagram. So that was quite fun actually.
In fact, I think the only thing I would hate about Indian movies is, the repetitive use of gun libraries. It all more or less sounds the same.
Yeah,
You know, I think for English movies, they particularly have a scope to go out in the field, because in the US, you could tell someone to go out in the field and fire, wherein you could record all those effects while they are being fired.
agree. But again, like I don't know any place in India that I can actually go and record a sound. I mean, it happened because I could go to Vietnam and do it.
Correct, correct.
The repetitive use of guns is also because, let's say, for example, most of the Indian movies might show the AK-47.
Mm-hmm.
And the AK-47 usually is pretty much the same 20, 30, 50 sounds that we usually use.
Mm.
That might be one of the reasons you say that, that gun sounds very repetitive.
That's exactly my point. If I could go on to the next question, I would want to chat a little about Dolby Atmos. Yeah, I understand working with Dolby Atmos would be amazing for films. But what about music? Of late, I think podcasts have also started using this technology. Would there be a solid difference between the two formats, films and music? And also, do you think Dolby Atmos would be here to stay?
I would say that the Dolby Atmos should be here to stay
Okay,
because it is capable of delivering much more than a stereo can deliver. Okay,
right.
it is capable.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the word I'm using, capable,
Mm-hmm.
is strictly on the engineer.
Right.
Dolby Atmos by itself
Mm-hmm.
cannot help anything.
Right.
It is on the engineer to use Dolby Atmos effectively
Hmm.
to create that extra dimension of world. And that is absolutely possible. And we have always been doing it.
Mm-hmm.
See, when we graduated from 5.1 to 7.1 to Atmos,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many things that we have achieved in terms of separation.
Mm.
Say, for example, sound separation.
Right.
It's a truth. I say, for example, something that used to come out of two speakers is now coming out of six speakers, is now coming out of eight speakers, is now coming out of 7.1.4
Yeah.
for an OTT,
Correct.
and literally 128 channels. Imagine 128 channels in a theater. I mean, you can literally play sound in any one localized point.
Wow.
So we started using that from Doom 3.
Right.
So in Doom, there is a first scene, where the bike is jumping over the head, and the bike is actually feels like it jumps over your head.
Hmm.
And even in this, in Pathan, lots of rockets and the tunnel shot, the gunshots, and bullet passes, lot of sounds that actually give you that extra fidelity.
Mm-hmm.
Fidelity is a very non-technical term, but I know we use that because the people are familiar with that term.
Right.
You get a lot of separation, you get lots of clarity with each voice that you use.
Mm-hmm.
And it is and music, when you come to music, you can actually create like, of course, you understand that you have to remix it almost from from the stems. The stems are basically individual tracks.
Correct.
So basically, the guitar is separate, the vocal is separate, your strings are separate, your percussion is separate, your hi hats, everything is separate.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's on how you place it. And it doesn't even sometimes always mean that because you have all the tracks, you have to always rotate it around your head. No, that is not that necessarily not be a good mix.
Hmm.
But what a stereo can achieve
Hmm.
in a Dolby Atmos or Dolby binaural,
Mm-hmm.
which is again, based on the same principles. But binaural is a slightly different approach. Personally, I would say the binaural is out of the world. It's really like how you hear something in real life. You should get some binaural recordings. They are outstanding.
Wow.
So if you can actually mix the music in Atmos and then get the output in binaural, then it will be outstanding. Only thing is that your engineer has to be capable and he has to be technically sound, not just in terms of the technology, the technical part of it, but also in terms of aesthetics.
Hmm.
If the engineer can achieve that, I then feel that it'll be truly like an addition, like an added uh, dimension to the whole experience.
Wow, the excitement you had in saying this shows how amazing Dolby Atmos really is. All right, Ganesh, a last question. Any advice that you'll have for upcoming sound engineers?
See, I wouldn't say advice, but if you're passionate enough to pursue and you want to do something,
Mm-hmm.
you should just go ahead and do it. See, I only have my example to say here because I was working. I told you I was working in a software company,
Mm-hmm.
and one fine day that I felt that I'm not cut out for that,
Hmm.
and I had developed an interest for this. I left my job. I came to Mumbai. I did what I had to do,
Hmm.
not thinking about the consequences. Once I did that, we were backmates and we were in the same college, and you know how things were.
Correct.
We did our best, and then 17 years later, I'm still I'm here working, enjoying, fine, everything's going well. So there is no advice that I can give. That if I believe that if you full heartedly go into something,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter what you're doing, but if you truly convinced about something, if you really like what you're doing, I think you are supposed to make it in that field.
Awesome.
You have to make it in that field. I mean, what else is this world for? I mean, it's for you to achieve what you want to do, right?
Correct. Correct.
The world is not here to dictate what you should do. You are here to dictate to the world like what you want to do, and for that you have to make an effort, and you have to do what you have to do. That's it.
Wow, that was advice from the heart.
Yeah.
This chat went really well, Ganesh. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you, Anand. And it's truly wonderful that you come up with this idea where 10, 15 years back, when we wanted to know more about something that we really want to get into, we did not have that kind of information. But today, it is very easy to get a lot of information on the net. You can contact the person whom you want to work with, or you want to follow, or whatever. Now it is possible for one person to sit in their bedroom and just listen to these kind of exchange of ideas and more information. He can make a very informed decision. The next generation should have more of these opportunities of gaining more knowledge, so that they can be probably like better than the previous generation and achieve more things that we could ever achieve, right? That's the whole idea. That's how the world goes ahead.
Thank you so much for doing this, and I wish you the best.
All right.